Hey, Monte with Scoopnost Novel Zhilenya, with you again talking about typical questions that I get from people. So here's another one. Doesn't the Big Bang and evolution remove the need for God? Okay, if it were true, yes, it absolutely would. But there are a lot of questions about both the Big Bang and evolution that need to be answered. So I'm going to briefly deal with each one. The theory behind the Big Bang is that at a point in time, a substance, smaller than a grain of salt, but incredibly dense, suddenly expanded to include everything we see today when we study the universe. So, wow, that's a nice, very simple explanation. But this explanation brings many more questions than answers. Where did the substance come from? What forces caused it to expand? Where did these forces come from? The answers to these questions, well, we don't know. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not against science or trying to explain things we don't understand. Let me also say that it is the duty of science to find credible and experimentally repeatable solutions to problems. Science does not and should not deal with supernatural physical phenomena, for example, miracles. And it is acceptable to say, we don't know, but maybe it is like this. Now, on paper, that is how it's stated. But in practical discussion, what is never said, we don't know. It is always stated, this is how it happened. But accepting something based on some facts that point us this way, that's not a real solution. At some point, it must be accepted by faith. Whoa, what was that word? Yes, faith. Belief in something that you can't see or prove. Now, again, I get it. It is science's best explanation based on their research. But it can't be proven, so then it's faith. So here's a shocker to you atheists and skeptics. You must believe it by faith. One could say it is a religion. That is what belief is, after all. So both the believer in God and the atheist or skeptic follow their belief by faith. Now, here is where someone will inevitably say, yes, but we have a lot of evidence. And I can say, so do we. There's a little thing called logic, and that is the best friend of the believer in God. The laws of nature are another great friend to believers in God, and neither of these can simply be set aside to make room for your preferred explanation. And yet, they must for the Big Bang to work. Logically, what comes from nothing? Well, nothing. Science doesn't like to go too far into their explanations because it takes them into waters that are very deep. Because of the problems with Big Bang, some have put forward the explanation that the universe is simply eternal. And that's an even worse explanation. This defies every law of nature when you bring up the facts that the universe is still expanding, and also the fact that it is running out of usable energy. No, that explanation is not satisfactory either. But look, I blame no one for exercising faith in their belief system. I do the same. Only I do it with the Creator God because it makes much more sense and it matches what I see with my own eyes. Now concerning evolution, we all know the theory that was made famous by Charles Darwin, and it's stated this way. Evolution is the change in characteristics of a species over several generations and relies on the process of natural selection. He believed, even innocently I believe, that because there were different finches better suited to different environments, that it meant that they had changed their physical characteristics to suit the environment. And a very famous explanation of evolution is the peppered moth. Perhaps you've heard of this in your school. Before the Industrial Revolution in Old England, mid-1700s, the peppered moth was the most commonly found moth there in that area. It's a pale whitish color with black spots. This coloring enabled them to hide from potential predators on trees that had pale colored bark, such as birch trees, very common in that area. The rarer, dark-colored peppered moths were usually seen by the predators because they stood out against the pale bark of the trees, and therefore they were much more easily seen by the predators. But when the Industrial Revolution reached its peak, the air in the industrial areas became full of this black soot, and this stained the trees and buildings black. And as a result, the lighter moths became much easier to spot against the darker ones. So that made them vulnerable to being seen by birds. The darker moths were now camouflaged against the soot-stained trees and therefore less likely to be eaten. So over time, this change in the environment led to darker moths becoming more common and the pale moths more rare. Well, that's a great story, but how does this connect with evolution? I honestly don't understand. This could be an example of natural selection, I agree, but did the moths actually change their color? No, they did not. As a matter of fact, you can still find white peppered moths today. Now, would a dark moth be more suited to a darker environment and therefore live longer? Yeah, absolutely. But why is this used as a proof of macroevolution? I simply cannot explain it. You see, there's a difference between macroevolution and microevolution. Micro, if you want to put it that way, is best exemplified in dog breeding. And they use this as an example in their evolution discussions too. The vast majority of distinct breeds that we recognize today are really only about 150 years old. Dogs with certain traits were bred together to enhance these traits, and after continuing this process, you can have an entirely different breed of dog. But here's the catch to that. They're still dogs. And though many times dog breeding is used as an example of evolution, it is really just selective breeding. Microevolution, if you will. You can never take a dog and breed it with a cat and get a new species. That crosses some line in genetics that is simply not compatible between the two animals. That line is what is called in the Bible a kind. The Bible says over and over again that different animals reproduce after their kind. You could line it up with the species. It's amazing that enough genetic material is built into each kind to have massive differences, from the giant Irish Wolfhound and Great Dane to the little Chihuahua, but each are distinctively dogs. Evolutionists say that given enough time, there's a phrase that you will hear over and over, you should get one species from another. We just can't see it in action. Right. That's convenient. Another thing to point out is that supposedly evolution is unguided. It has no mind, it has no direction. But one of their better examples, dog breeding, is very guided. Add this, even though all these millions of years are required to take one species to another in their model of evolution, there is yet to be found any fossil evidence of a transitional species, a cat dog, as it were. They're looking, but for now, you just have to trust them. So Darwin wrote in his Origin of the Species about one of his fears. He said this: if it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not possibly have been formed by numerous successive slight modifications, my theory would absolutely break down. But I can find no such case. Now that was written in 1859. Since that time, science has come a very long way. Dr. Michael Behe, who received his PhD in biochemistry and is currently a biological sciences professor at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania, published his work in response to that statement from Darwin. Through his research of the bacterial flagellum, he proved that such complexity did exist. His concept is called irreducible complexity. In other words, if you take one part out, it would no longer function. He uses a mousetrap as an example. Remove one part of the mousetrap and it doesn't work anymore. And there are countless examples in nature that support his idea. I do want to point one more time to this website, and I highly recommend that you go look and read what it says. It's called descentfromdarwin.org. And its main statement is this: we are skeptical of claims for the ability of random mutation and natural selection to account for the complexity of life. Careful examination of the evidence for Darwin theory should be encouraged. Now, on this website, hundreds and hundreds of scientists from around the world have signed this declaration. This is not some small cult of people in an isolated area. They are experts in relevant fields like genetics and microbiology, and they come from every area of the world. And quite honestly, they know much more about the subject than you and I ever will know. And they don't buy what many are selling about evolution. With so many holes in the argument of Big Bang starting it all and evolution moving it along, if I had blindly believed those theories my whole life, I would be taking a second look at it and then be open to consider other alternatives, such as the Creator God. An intelligent designer makes much more sense than a mindless accident that could never be proven and has no real tangible evidence. My Bible says the very first chapter, the very first verse, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, maybe you have a different perspective on this question. I'd love to sit down and talk with you about this a little more deeply. I can only put so much information in this video. But if you want to discuss it, I'm happy to sit down with you and discuss more about this topic. Maybe there's other questions that you have that haven't been answered. Again, let's get together and talk about it. I'd love to sit down with you and explain from a Christian perspective what the answer is. So you can find the ways to get in contact with us at the QR code that's going to follow this video. So until the next video, God bless you.